for me, the initial nugget was it showed up in my inbox.
I read 42 drafts. Is that a correct number?
That is a correct number. But let me say this. That doesn't mean we tore it up and started over 42 times. New drafts begin quite exhaustive, and then the work tapers as you go on. But it did represent, every time you present a new script to the director, that's a draft. So, and by the end, by draft number 42, you're changing 3 or 4 lines. But it does reflect the fact that we spent 2 years working exhaustively on this script.
And 42 is a special number if you've ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah, you're right. It is, in fact, the key to everything. Isn't it the answer to everything?
To life, the universe, and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of that, in terms of what is important for everything, this movie obviously talks about empathy. You as a writer need to be, very fluent in empathy. Can you talk a little about the importance of that and why it's important to talk about it now and always?
Yeah. Well, the structure of the film was going to be a chase. It was going to be thrilling, and we wanted it to be in this sort of breathless package, which it is. But we also knew the movie needed to be emotional, and that's the stuff I'm proudest of, is where I feel like it really connects emotionally. And the message of the movie is that empathy is the most important evolutionary element in humans. And if you look at history, everything that's been accomplished in history has been accomplished through cooperation. Yeah. The agrarian revolution, people learned, hey, if we all go out and plant these seeds and grow these plants and then learn how to store them together, because it's way too much work for one person, then the species will thrive. And sure enough, it did. You can't build a bridge without cooperation. Yes. And in these precarious times we live in now, we will not survive without trying to understand each other. And if we don't, we're lost, because we've developed the technological ability to destroy ourselves.
When you're going back to a little bit of your process, when you're writing, it's a very action-oriented film, but you've written all sorts of films. How much are you thinking, or are you thinking at all about how it's going to look, how it's going to be done? Or do you not think about that at all?
I do think about that, because sometimes people think a screenwriter just writes what the people say, but not at all. The screenwriter's responsibility is everything an audience member sees or hears. And the sequences that you can express visually are often more important than the sequences that are expressed just with words. Yeah. So your first responsibility is to present a shootable, visual document of what the movie's going to be. And the director has to be able to see it so he can change everything. So he can then have his ideas and you work through. But you can't overlook the look of a movie and what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel like, what it's going to sound like.
There's a lot of screenwriting rules. You can do this, you can't do that, do this, do that. How much do you adhere to those rules? With so much experience, like you're describing right now how you're not supposed to write what people think. No, but how much are you thinking of the theory of, like, we have a lot of our readers who are in film school, mm-hmm. and they're getting taught a lot of things. How much do you pay attention to, like, the rules of screenwriting?
The only rule I pay attention to is this: the tools you have are what an audience member sees and what they hear. So if you write, John is upset thinking about his father, you have cheated. You're writing a novel. Go write your novel. However, if John has a look on his face and you cut and you see that he's looking at a picture of himself with his father, and then you cut back and he's crying, now you've used movie language to say John is thinking about his father. Pretty crude. You should probably work on that scene.
Yeah.
But other than that rule, forget all the rest. Forget all the rest. Your responsibility is to create in the reader's mind the experience of watching a movie. That's really hard to do. So anything you can do to create that experience and keep the pages turning and not bog them down, that's okay with me.
How did this one, what was the nugget that began this one, the idea?
Well, I'd love to say a childhood experience of mine, but it wasn't. It's a childhood experience of Steven's. And he sent me a treatment. He said, look, I've been thinking about this idea for years. I wrote it up in a treatment form. It's messy. It's just all my ideas as they occurred. And he sent it to me, and I read it and said, I assumed he would write it himself.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's great. The ending works great. I'm confused here. I'd move that there. I wonder what does that guy want? You know, the usual notes you'd give another writer. And then he worked on it some more and sent it back and said, why don't you do it? And then I started the process of making it my own. So the initial nugget, you'd have to ask Steven, but for me, the initial nugget was it showed up in my inbox.